Good evening and happy Mother's Day. It's great to be learning with you on a Sunday night. That was part 2 of the song called Nigun from Eitan Katz's Unplugged #2 album. How's everybody doing? Let's light up the darkness. Who's with us on a Sunday night? Yehuda in South Carolina, Nancy in North Carolina, Stephen in New Hampshire, James in Indianapolis, Melissa in Great Neck, Shandora in the Bronx, John in Maine, Paul in the Great Northwest, Bella in Florida, Renee in Indiana, John in Michigan, George in Kansas, Lucy in Minnesota. A name written in Greek letters that probably Bill could tell me how to pronounce because I don't know. I apologize. But shalom from New Zealand. Paula wishing all a happy Mother's Day. Welcome. Aoife from Florida. Today's episode of AT Daily is sponsored by Jeannie Schechter for the healing of Michael. May he have a complete and speedy recovery. May we only hear good news. And we say amen. Also, we dedicate our learning today to our dear friend Jen's father, Ray Ben Esther, who's in a pretty critical situation right now. May he be blessed with a complete and speedy recovery. We say amen. And Jeannie, may you and Michael and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. Jen, may you and Todd and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. We say amen. All right. We started to talk about Mishna number 7 here in chapter 6 of Tractate Yevamos, the 14th volume of the Talmud, the laws of Yibum, levirate marriage. Here in chapter 6, we've been looking at the elements of Yibum and its implications in other areas of law, specifically what constitutes intercourse, such that if a man died and did not have children and he left a widow, his brother and the widow are obligated to perform Yibum, levirate marriage, which its principal requirement is intercourse, but in various contexts and situations and within certain parameters, we see that there's a lot of nuances to that law, and it has implications in other areas of the law. For example, a high priest is only permitted to marry a young virgin woman. He can't marry not only a divorcee like an ordinary priest, but not even a widow because he is the high priest. What if he had betrothed a woman before he was elevated to high priest and then he was promoted, etc.? Questions like this. Now that we're talking about intercourse, as being this very, important element of marriage, not the only element, but an important element. Now we've started talking about also this commandment, Peru Urevu, be fruitful and multiply. It's actually the first commandment God ever gave, right? Even in the course of creation, he gave the commandment, be fruitful and multiply, first to the animals and then to the humans. And so as we saw in this Mishna number 7 of chapter 6, it's very short, so I'll just read it again. A man may not neglect the mitzvah, the commandment, to be fruitful and multiply unless he already has children. Beis Shammai, the followers of the great sage Shammai, say one fulfills this mitzvah with 2 males. He has to have 2 boy children. And Beis Hillel, the school of Hillel, the followers of Hillel, say a male and a female. As it is stated from Genesis 5:2, male and female, he created them. So presumably to replace the human species with the next generation, a man would have to father a boy and a girl, according to Beis Hillel, and the law follows Beis Hillel. All right, we pick this up at the bottom of page 61b. Today's daf is Samech Beis, page 62. So at the bottom of 61b, the Mishnah states that Beis Shammai say that one fulfills the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply when he has 2 males. And the Gemara asks, what is the reason of Beis Shammai? And the Gemara answers, we learn this from Moses. Moses. Why would we look to Moses? As it is written, the sons of Moses, Gershom and Eliezer, from the 1 Chronicles 23:15. Now, since Moses did not have any other children, 2 sons must be sufficient to fulfill the mitzvah. As who could we trust more than the lawgiver Moses, who took dictation of the Torah personally from God of what is the law? If Moses had 2 boys, it must be sufficient to have 2 boys. And Beis Shammai, so then Beis Shammai learn it from Moses. But Beis Hillel say a boy and a girl is what a man needs to father. So where do they get it? They looked at Genesis 5:2, male and female. And the reason of Beis Hillel is that we learn from the creation of the world as mankind was created male and female. And the Gemara asks, and Beis Shammai, let them learn from the creation of the world as well. And the Gemara answers that Beis Shammai could say to you, we do not derive a case where it is possible from one that is not possible. What do they mean? Now we're in 62a. Mankind was initially created with a male and a female because otherwise reproduction would not have been possible. However, this fact cannot serve as a source that the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply may only be fulfilled once a man has a son and a daughter. Right? It was necessary for Adam and Eve to be male and female so that they could start reproducing and create the human race, but we don't necessarily learn out that that's the job of every man. And as I mentioned before, the sages obligate a man in the mitzvah of Peru Urivu. Women are not obligated. Obviously, they're a big part of the process, but women aren't obligated, and that's a kindness to women. And the reason is, our sages understand, is because, especially in the ancient world, there was danger in childbirth. And so if a woman feared the danger of a childbirth and that she could die in childbirth, which is a complication that happened from time to time in the ancient world, the Torah will not obligate somebody to do something that is going to be detrimental to their health. And childbirth could kill a woman, and so she's not obligated. But a man is obligated, right? He is obligated to have 2 children. According to Beis Hillel, a boy and a girl. According to Beis Shammai, a boy and a boy. But we follow Beis Hillel. So Beis Shammai say they don't learn from the story of creation because, okay, Adam and Eve had to have a boy and a girl so they could keep it moving. But now a world that's filled with many males and many females, it might be enough just to have 2 so that you add that number to the next generation. And the Gemara asks in Beis Hillel, let them also learn from Moses, right? Beis Shammai learned from Moses. He had 2 boys, good enough for Moses, good enough for us. So then maybe Beis Hillel should learn it out from Moses. Well, Beis Hillel would say to you, Moses acted based on his own perception when he separated from his wife. But this does not mean that man is permitted to neglect the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply after fathering 2 males. Basically, Beis Hillel is saying, what are you going to learn from saying to Beis Shammai? How can you learn out from Moses the obligations of the average Jewish man? Moses was most definitely a special case, particularly in that during the 40 years in the desert, he was sort of a prophet on call. Right? He had to be ready to receive prophecy at any time because he didn't know when God was going to speak to him next. And God was speaking to him frequently. And since God had instructed Moses to tell the Jewish people before God's appearance on Mount Sinai, that a man should not come near a woman, right? In other words, they should not, have marital relations for 2 days, and then on the 3rd day is when God appeared on Mount Sinai. Moses took that to mean that, okay, before having communication directly with God, a man should separate himself from his wife for at least 2 days and then ready for communication on the 3rd day. Since communication from God could happen to Moses at any time, he felt that he had to separate himself from his wife. He did not fulfill the husband's obligation toward his wife because he perceived that he's in a unique situation where he has a greater obligation to the whole Jewish people. And we actually learn out that when Miriam was critical of Moses, it was for neglecting his own wife. And that's that whole episode where she sort of talked to their brother Aaron about it and said, what's Moses doing? And then she ended up getting struck with Sira'as, right? The physical manifestation of a spiritual malady that was the eruptions in the skin, Sira'as. And then, Moses prayed for her and she was healed, but she had to separate herself from the community for a week. But it came out of this idea that Moses was neglecting his wife. So if Beis Shammai are going to say that we can learn out from Moses, it's enough to have 2 boys and then you're done. How can you do that? Moses was in this unique situation, and if he hadn't been a prophet required to be a prophet on demand at any time from God, he might well have had more children with his wife, and perhaps he would have at least had a boy and a girl. But now Beis Hillel doesn't just say that. They're saying that this idea of Moses, that he had to separate himself from his wife, God didn't tell him to do that. Moses figured that out, right? Moses based that on his own perception of what would be required to fulfill, the obligations of his situation as the greatest prophet ever and the lawgiver of the Jewish people. But God didn't tell him, separate from your wife. So Beis Hillel, let them learn this out from Moses. Well, Beis Hillel could answer, Moses acted based on his own perception when he separated from his wife. But this does not mean that a man is permitted to neglect the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply after fathering 2 males. As is taught in a Baraisa, Moses did 3 things based on his own perception, and his perception agreed with the perception of the Almighty. He separated from his wife, he broke the tablets, and he added 1 day to the days of separation before the revelation at Sinai. And now the Gemara will digress a little bit to talk about these 3 matters in which Moses sort of took it upon himself to make a little bit of a fence around the Torah that God was giving him. So the Gemara clarifies, when Moses separated from his wife after the revelation at Sinai, what did he interpret that led him to do so? Well, he said, if in the case of Israel, meaning all of Israel, the Jewish people, with whom the divine presence spoke only temporarily, God only spoke to the Jewish people once, right, at Mount Sinai, and for whom God set a specific time for that revelation, as the Torah stated, Exodus 19:15, do not approach a woman. So I, Moses, who am set aside for divine speech all the time, and for whom God did not set a specific time that, he would talk to me. I don't know when he's going to talk to me next. It happens really often. So all the more so, I must separate from my wife. And his perception agreed with the perception of the Almighty. As it is stated after the revelation at Sinai, God said to Moses, go say to them, the Jewish people, return to your tents, meaning return to your home, meaning return to your wives. You can resume having marital relations in your tents. But God said, go say to them, return to your tents. And you, Moses, stand here with me. That's Deuteronomy 5:26 and 27. So this indicates that whereas others could return to their homes and normal married life after the revelation at Sinai, Moses was to stay with God and not return to his wife. I don't know why it does that. I don't know if it does that on your computers or on your phones. Occasionally, the broadcast is still ongoing and my computer shows that it has ended. But if I just refresh the window, I'm still going. So in case you ever think I've stopped, just refresh. I'm probably still going. I don't know why that happens on my computer. Okay. Second matter that Moses took upon his own recognizance. Moses broke the tablets, right? Remember that when he came down and he found the people cavorting with the golden calf, he smashed the first set of tablets on which were written the 10 Commandments. So Moses broke the tablets following the sin of the golden calf. What did he interpret that led him to do so? How did Moses know that he had the right to do that? Now, we might think, maybe he was just really angry, and in a fit of anger and frustration, he just smashed the tablets on the ground. Yet, we got to give Moses a little more credit than that. He thought it through. In fact, God warned him when he was on top of the mountain what the people were doing. He had time to think about it. So when he smashed the tablets, he actually had a very specific reason for doing so, as we learn. What did Moses interpret that led him to smash the tablets? Moses said, if in the case of the Paschal lamb, meaning the Korban Pesach, the Passover offering, the lamb that we slaughter at Passover, which is only one of the 613 mitzvahs, the commandments. About it, the Torah states, no alien shall eat of it. Exodus 12:43. This excludes not only non-Jews, right, the Korban Pesach is an offering only for Jews to eat, but also excluded are apostate Jews. Well then, here, in the case of the golden calf, where the tablets represent the entire Torah, and where the Jewish people, the entire Jewish people, are apostate, as they are worshiping the calf, all the more so, they must be excluded from receiving them, and that's why he smashed them. Now, what he was doing there is not saying, you people have lost the right to receive the 10 commandments, and now you're never going to get them. He's saying, if I hand these people the commandments, which they've already agreed to accept, and here they are committing idolatry, then they're all subject to the death penalty. So I'm going to smash the contract to save their lives. They can make an atonement and sort of re-enter this covenant when I return with the second set of tablets, and he returns on Yom Kippur, right? So they have to make an atonement for the golden calf. Where am I? All the more so should they be excluded from receiving the commandments. And his perception agreed with the perception of the Almighty, as it is written, the first tablets that you broke, Asher Shibarta, Exodus 34:1. And Reish Lakish said, the word Asher here is an allusion to the fact that the Holy One, blessed be He, said to Moses, may your strength be true, Yishar Kohacha, that you broke the tablets, right? In other words, God ratified Moses' action of smashing the first set of tablets. And of course, it's a very classical teaching that whereas the first tablets were carved and inscribed by God, the second set of tablets were carved by Moses and inscribed by God. And so the whole covenant that we are a part of is a partnership, as it were. God obviously gives us all the commandments, and we follow the commandments because he said so. But the idea that he also gives us an oral law, which has a few core oral teachings given at Sinai, but that it sets the stage for the oral tradition, which grows in every generation as the sages of every generation, sort of interpret how the laws of the Torah are to be applied in the real world, and the real world keeps changing. And so we partner with God in, sort of creating and living up to the covenant. And when Moses added one day to the days of separation, I mentioned that before, God says to Moses, tell the people, do not come near a woman, because he's now going to have the revelation at Mount Sinai. They need to all be in a state of purity. And having marital relations renders one tameh, and they would need to immerse and then wait until nightfall, etc. But God says, don't come near a woman, do not have marital relations, for a certain amount of time before the revelation on Mount Sinai. And Moses added one day to that period of separation, like this. When Moses added one day to the days of separation before the revelation at Sinai, based on his own perception, what did he interpret that led him to do so? He reasoned that since it is written, and sanctify them today and tomorrow, the juxtaposition of the words today and tomorrow teaches that today is like tomorrow. So just as tomorrow the men and women will separate for that day and the night preceding it, so too today requires separation for the day and the night preceding it. And since God spoke to him in the morning and the night of that day had already passed, Moses said, conclude from this that the separation must be in effect for 2 whole days. Remember, Jewish days on the Jewish calendar begin the night before. So he needed a night and a day, and then it was the next day that God is going to appear to them. So conclude from this that separation must be in effect for 2 days aside from now, i.e. not including the day of the command. Therefore, he extended the mitzvah separation by 1 day. And his perception agreed with the perception of the Almighty, as the divine presence did not rest upon Mount Sinai until Shabbos morning. as Moses had determined, right? God gave the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai on Shabbos. It is taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Nassan says, Beis Shammai say the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply is fulfilled with 2 males and 2 females. And Beis Hillel say 1 male and 1 female. Right, so now we're getting a different interpretation of what we read in the Mishna, that Beis Shammai say a man has to father 2 boys before he has fulfilled his obligation to be fruitful and multiply. Rabbi Nassan says we were misunderstanding the Mishnah. What Beis Shammai actually said was 2 boys and 2 girls, but Beis Hillel said 1 boy and 1 girl will do. Rav Huna said, what is the reason of Rabbi Nassan? In accordance with the opinion... What is the reason of Rabbi Nassan in accordance with the opinion of Beis Shammai? Why does Rabbi Nassan interpret Beis Shammai in this way? It is as it is written at Genesis 4:2, and again she bore his brother, et achiv, Hevel, right? Abel, right? Cain and Abel. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now, the use of the superfluous word et, right, or s in a more Ashkenaz pronunciation. Now, in Hebrew, when you have a direct object to a verb, like here, she bore him a son, or she bore another brother, then, you just put in this helper verb, s, right? Where am I? Right, which is aleph taf. So this aleph taf, it's not a word that has a meaning in itself. It's a sort of grammatical, structural word that comes between the verb and the direct object because of Hebrew grammar. However, the sages, at least some of the sages in the Talmud, will find additional meanings in this word. Since it doesn't carry a meaning in itself, they say it's open to bring another meaning down. So here the use of this word s indicates that she gave birth to Abel and his sister, in addition to Cain and his sister. We only hear about Cain and Abel and later Seth, but they didn't have sex with their mother. Obviously, there were other children, and they were girl children, right? So, that original family, they had to commit incest, as it were, where brothers were marrying sisters, because there were just no other humans around to do it with. But the bottom line is that family, as originally comprised before Cain killed Abel, was 2 boys and 2 girls. And it states, for God has appointed me another seed instead of Abel, for Cain slew him, at Genesis 4:25. And this indicates that one must have at least 4 children. And the rabbis, how do they understand this verse? In their opinion, Eve was thanking God for granting her another child, but one is not obligated to have 4 children, per the opinion of Rabbi Nassan. It is taught in another Baraisa that Rabbi Nassan says that Beis Shammai say the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply is fulfilled with a male and a female. And Beis Hillel say either a male or a female. Right? And here in this other teaching, Rabbi Nassan is saying that according to Beis Hillel, 1 child is sufficient. And Rava said, what is the reason of Rabbi Nassan in accordance with the opinion of Beis Hillel? It is as it is stated in Isaiah 45:18 about God. He did not create it a waste. He formed it, meaning our world, to be inhabited. And therefore, one has made the earth inhabited to a greater degree, even if he only adds 1 child to the population. It was stated that Amoraim, the sages of the Mishna, the sages of the Gemara, disagreed over the following issue. If a man had children when he was a Gentile and he subsequently converted to Judaism, Rabbi Yochanan said he has already fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, and Reish Lakish says he has not fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. Rabbi Yochanan said he has fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply because he has already had children. And Reish Lakish said he has not fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, as the legal status of a convert to Judaism who has just converted is like that of a newborn child, and it is considered as though he did not have children prior to his conversion. The Gemara comments, and they follow their regular line of reasoning. As it was stated, If one had children when he was a Gentile and he subsequently converted, Rabbi Yochanan said he does not have a firstborn with regard to the law of inheritance, i.e., the first son born to him after his conversion does not inherit a double portion, as this man already had what's called the Torah, the first of his strength. Right? The firstborn son receives the double portion. Now, if this guy, before he converted to Judaism, he had a son, then he converted, so then what's the deal? If he's supposedly like a newborn child, and he's sort of starting anew and creating a family after he converts to Judaism, so then you would think that the first son he has after he converts, for the purpose of the Jewish law of inheritance, it would be that son that would receive the double portion. But Rabbi Yochanan says no, because the Torah talks about why does the first son get that double portion? Because he is the initial strength of a man, the initial vigor of a man. And he already, had his son from his initial vigor, right? The first that came from his loins, as it were, even if it was before his conversion. But Reish Lakish disagrees and says he does have a firstborn with regard to inheritance, as the legal status of a convert who just converted is like that of a child just born, and therefore the first son born after the conversion will receive the double portion according to the law of inheritance. And the Gemara adds, and it is necessary to state their opinions in both cases, as had it only been taught to us with regard to that first case of the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, one might have said that it is only in that case that Rabbi Yochanan said his opinion, because from the outset, Gentiles are also subject to the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. That's not only appertaining to Jews. All creatures are commanded to be fruitful and multiply. However, with regard to inheritance, since they are not subject to the laws of inheritance, one might say that Rabbi Yochanan concedes to Reish Lakish. And conversely, if their dispute was stated only with regard to the issue of inheritance, I would have said that it is only in this case that Reish Lakish said his opinion, as the laws of inheritance do not apply to Gentiles. In other words, the Jewish laws of inheritance only apply to Jews. They wouldn't apply to Gentiles. But with regard to that case, the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, one might say that he concedes to Rabbi Yochanan. Consequently, it is necessary for both disputes to be recorded. Rabbi Yochanan raises an objection to Reish Lakish based upon the verse 2 Kings 20:12. At that time, Berodach Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent a letter, which indicates that non-Jews are considered to be the children of their parents in the same way that Jews have a lineage through their parents. Therefore, when they convert, they should already have fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. They had children before they converted. Okay, so they were fruitful and multiplied. And Reish Lakish said to Rabbi Yochanan, when they are Gentiles, they do have family lineage. But when they convert, they do not have lineage, as they are now belong to a special class of people, converts who have joined the family of the Jewish people and are considered that their relatives from before are not their relatives for the law of inheritance and likewise for lineage. Rav said, everyone agrees with regard to a Canaanite slave that he does not have lineage, as it is written that Abraham said to his slaves, remain here with the donkey. Genesis 22:5. That's in the story of the Akedas Yitzhak, the binding of Yitzhak, when God was told to sacrifice his son Yitzhak as a test. He took with him 2 youths, right? And I think we get in a midrash that who were they? It was Ishmael and his loyal servant Eliezer. But they're not named. So in this teaching, it just says that those were his slaves and they were told, remain here with the donkey. So this verse is interpreted to mean that they are a nation comparable to a donkey, the Canaanite slaves, which has no lineage. And the Gemara raises an objection based upon a verse pertaining to Jonathan, right? Jonathan, the son of King Saul, Jonathan's Canaanite slave, which we learned about in 2 Samuel 9:10, and Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. So Jonathan's slave had his own slaves, which indicates that a slave's sons are in fact considered his sons. And Rav Acha Bar Yaakov said, this is like the expression, a bullock, son of a bull. And the word son in this context merely denotes progeny, not lineage. So the Gemara asks, if so, here too, with regard to non-Jews, there is no proof from the verse about Berodach Baladan that they have family lineage? And the Gemara answers, there it is different. As the Bible identified him by his name, this Babylonian king, and by his father's name, thereby emphasizing the family connection. But here it does not specify the names of Ziba's children, the children of Ziba, the slave of Jonathan. And if you wish, say instead that the Bible identified non-Jews elsewhere by their father and their father's father, as it is written in 1 Kings 15:18, and King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, the son of Tabrimon, the son of Hezion, king of Aram, who dwelled in Damascus, saying, and there was a lengthy lineage of a non-Jewish king. And this indicates that there is lineage for non-Jews. It was stated that the Amoraim, the sages of the Gemara, disagreed over the following issue. If a man had children and they died, Rav Huna said he has fulfilled his obligation to be fruitful and multiply through these children, even if they died afterward. And Rabbi Yochanan said he has not fulfilled the mitzvah. And the Gemara clarifies the reasons for their opinions. Rav Huna said he has fulfilled the mitzvah due to the statement of Rav Asi, as Rav Asi said that the reason for this mitzvah is that the Messiah, the son of David, will not come until all the souls of the body have been finished, meaning until all souls that are destined to inhabit physical bodies will do so. It's like the timing of when the Mashiach is coming was sort of preordained by God in heaven, who said the Messiah will come to earth when this precise number of souls have entered the world and lived the lives that they were destined to live, and not until then. As it is stated, Isaiah 57:16, for the spirit that enwraps itself is from me and the souls that I have made. Consequently, once a child has been born and his soul has entered a body, the mitzvah has been fulfilled, even if that child subsequently dies. And Rabbi Yochanan said that a man, has not fulfilled his obligation to be fruitful and multiply if he fathers children who subsequently die. And what is Rabbi Yochanan's proof? Isaiah 45:18, God formed it to be inhabited. The world was formed to be inhabited, and this is not fulfilled when the children have passed away and no longer inhabit the earth, presumably before they sire their own children. So the Gemara raises an objection with regard to the opinion of Rav Huna based upon the following baraisa. Now we're on 62b. Grandchildren are considered like children. This indicates that if one's children have passed away, he has nevertheless fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply if they had children of their own, right? So if you're, God forbid, a person's children die, but if they had children before they die, then the person has fulfilled his obligation according to this view. So the Gemara responds, when that baraisa is taught, it is with regard to completing the required number of children. For example, if he had only a son, but his son had a daughter, then he has fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. But the Gemara objects to this. The Gemara objects to the opinion of Rav Huna from another baraisa, which states, grandchildren are considered like children. If one of a man's children died or was discovered to be a eunuch, right? It was sterile, and the man's child would not be able to reproduce himself. The father has not fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. And this directly contradicts Rav Huna's statement that one fulfills the mitzvah even if his children die, God forbid. And the Gemara concludes, the refutation of the opinion of Rav Huna is indeed a conclusive refutation. Right, so here I'll just read a couple of halachas. If a man's children died without leaving descendants, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. And grandchildren are considered like children if a man had a son and a daughter, and both died, but one of them had a son and one of them had a daughter. Since his surviving descendants include a male and a female, he has fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. However, if both this boy and girl grandchildren were the offspring of only one of his children, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah, since only one of his own children, sort of survived to be reproducing. He still has to father another child according to this halacha. So it was taught in the baraisa that grandchildren are considered like children. Abaye thought to say that if one's children die, he fulfills the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply through grandchildren, provided a son was born to his son and a daughter to his daughter, and all the more so if a son was born to his daughter, as his grandchildren take the place of his children in these cases. However, if a daughter was born to his son, no, she cannot take the place of her father. So Rava said to him, we require merely fulfillment of the verse, he formed it to be inhabited. And there is fulfillment in this case, as the earth is inhabited by his descendants, even if he only has one descendant. There are people, in the next generation from him. The Gemara comments, in any event, everyone agrees that if one has two grandchildren from one child, no, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, even if he has both a grandson and a granddaughter. And the Gemara asks, and has he not? Didn't the rabbi say to Rav Sheshes, marry a woman and have sons, as you have not yet fathered any sons? And Rav Sheshes said to them, the sons of my daughter are my sons. And this indicates that one can fulfill the mitzvah through grandchildren, even if he did not have both a son and a daughter of his own. And the Gemara answers, there Rav Sheshes was merely putting them off. The real reason he did not want to get remarried was because Rav Sheshes became impotent. And what made Rav Sheshes impotent? He became impotent from Rav Huna's discourse. What? Rav Huna's discourses were so lengthy that Rav Sheshes, who sat there listening to every word, became impotent after waiting for so long without relieving himself. This is a teaching we have elsewhere in the Talmud. That if a man is negligent in going to the bathroom when it's time to go to the bathroom and he's just straining and straining and straining to hold it in, he can really hurt himself. Rabba said to Rabba Bar Mari, from where is this matter that the sages stated derived, that grandchildren are considered like children? If we say it is derived from the fact that it is written about Lavan, right? Who was Lavan? Jacob's father-in-law, the father of Rachel, the brother of Rebekah, and the father of Rachel and Leah, right? So Jacob married Lavan's daughters, Rachel and Leah, and then eventually, had the 12 sons. By then, they became the 12 tribes of Israel, also by their maidservants. So he had 4 wives. So says Lavan, the daughters are my daughters and the children are my children, which indicates that Jacob's children were also considered to be the children of their grandfather Lavan. If that is so, does the continuation of Lavan's statement, and the flocks are my flocks, indicate that so too Jacob's flocks were considered as belonging to Lavan just because he said so? No, Jacob's flocks were Jacob's flocks. Lavan might say they're my flocks, but they weren't his flocks. So the fact that he says that those children are my children, your children are my children, doesn't make it so. Why would we use this as a source to prove that one's grandchildren are considered like his children? Rather, Lavan was saying that you, Jacob, acquired them from me. And here too, with regard to the children, Lavan was saying you acquired them from me. I.e., it is only due to me that you have children. That doesn't make the children considered Lavan's children. Rather, the proof that one's grandchildren are considered like his children is from here in 1 Chronicles 2:21. And afterward, Hezron went in to the daughter of Machir, the father of Gilead, and she bore him Seguv. And it is written, out of Machir came down governors. And it is written, Judah is my governor, in Psalms 60, verse 9. Consequently, the governors who were from the tribe of Judah were also called the sons of Machir, who was from the tribe of Menashe. This must be because they were the children of Machir's daughter, and Hezron indicating that grandchildren are considered like one's children and sort of assist in a person fulfilling his obligation to be fruitful and multiply. Now the Gemara comments, the Mishna is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua, as it is taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Yehoshua says, if a man married a woman in his youth and she passed away, he should marry another woman in his old age. If he had children in his youth, he should have more children in his old age. As it is stated in Ecclesiastes 11:6, in the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not withhold your hand, for you do not know which shall prosper, whether this or that, whether they both alike shall be good. And this verse indicates that a man should continue having children even after he has fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, which certainly makes sense given that we read that if, God forbid, a man's children die, so then, before they reproduce, so then he has not fulfilled his obligation. Since you never know, nothing is promised, and a person's children tragically could be taken from him. So then that's why, now you understand why very traditional families have lots of kids, just to ensure they're fulfilling this obligation. Rabbi Akiva says that the verse should be understood as follows. Not that if you had kids when you're young, you need to keep having kids when you're old, but rather, says Rabbi Akiva, if a person studied Torah in his youth, he should study more Torah in his old age. If he had students in his youth, he should have additional students in his old age. As it is stated, in the morning sow your seed, etc. They said, by way of example, that Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students, meaning 24,000 students, in an area of land that stretched from Givat to Antipatris in Judea, and they all died in one period of time because they did not treat each other with respect. What is the period of time when Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 students were dying? Right now, right? In the period that we're in right now, the first 33 days of the Omer, right? We started counting the Omer on the second night of Passover, and last night we counted 22. And it was during these first 33 days of the counting of the Omer that Rabbi Akiva, the greatest teacher that the Jewish world has ever known, second only to Moses, let's say, he had so many students and they all died. A plague struck them. The sages teach that plague struck them because they were uncivil with each other. They were disrespectful to each other. Why is that being brought up here? Because Rabbi Akiva had all those students sort of in the early part of his teaching career. Later, he had 5 later students. But it was those 5 students that were responsible for transmitting the Torah to the next generation. And the world was desolate of Torah until Rabbi Akiva came to our rabbis in the south and taught his Torah to them. Who was Rabbi Akiva's second later group of students in his life? Who were they? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosei, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. And these are the very ones who upheld the study of Torah at that time. Although Rabbi Akiva's earlier students did not survive, his later disciples were able to transmit the Torah to future generations. So if Rabbi Akiva had retired after, a lengthy and fruitful career that terminated in that terrible tragedy, then the Torah might have been lost from Israel. But he persevered and took on new students in his old age. Now, with regard to the 12,000 pairs of Rabbi Akiva's students, the Gemara adds, it is taught that all of them died in the period from Passover until Shavuos. And Rav Chama bar Abba said, and some say it was Rabbi Chia bar Avin, they all died a bad death. And the Gemara inquires, what is it that is called a bad death? Rav Nachman said diphtheria. Rav Matana said, the halacha is the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua, who said that one must attempt to have more children, even if he has already fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. Apropos the discussion with regard to the mitzvah to have children, the Gemara cites statements about marriage in general. Rabbi Tanchum said that Rabbi Chanilai said, any man who does not have a wife is left without joy, without blessing, without goodness. He proceeds to quote verses to support each part of his statement. He is without joy, as it is written, Deuteronomy 14:26, and you shall rejoice, you and your household, meaning you and your wife, which indicates that the man is in a joyful state only when he is with his household, i.e. his wife. He is without blessing, as it is written, Ezekiel 44:30, to cause blessing to rest in your house, which indicates that blessing comes through one's house, i.e. one's wife. Blessing only comes to a man through his wife, according to this teaching. He is without goodness, as it is written, Genesis 2:18, it is not good that man should be alone, i.e. without a wife. In the West, Eretz Yisrael, they say, one who lives without a wife is left without Torah and without a wall of protection. He is without Torah, as it is written, Is it that I have no help in me, that sound wisdom is driven from me, says Job at 6:13, indicating that one who does not have a wife lacks sound wisdom, i.e. Torah, and he is without a wall, as it is written, a woman shall go around a man, Jeremiah 31:21, similar to a protective wall. And it's also a common saying in the traditional world that the spiritual level of a household comes from the wife, right? It's the wife who determines what that spiritual level of that house will be. On the same verse, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, Rava bar Ula said, one who does not have a wife is left without peace, as it is written, and you shall know that your tent is in peace, and you shall visit your habitation and shall miss nothing. And this indicates that a man has peace only when he has a wife. On the same verse, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, whoever knows that his wife fears heaven, and she desires him, and he does not visit her, i.e. have intercourse with her, this man is called a sinner. As it is stated, and you shall know that your tent is in peace, and you shall visit your habitation. And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, a man is obligated to visit his wife for the purpose of having intercourse when he is about to depart on a journey. As it is stated, and you shall know that your tent is in peace, etc. Gemara asks, is this last statement, that a man should have relations with his wife before he goes on a journey, is it derived from here? Is actually also derived from another verse, Genesis 3:16, and your desire shall be to your husband. This is where God is telling Eve that her desire will be to her husband, which teaches that a wife desires her husband when he is about to depart on a journey. And Rav Yosef said the additional derivation cited by Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is necessary only near the time of her set pattern, i.e., when she expects to begin experiencing menstrual bleeding. Although the sages generally prohibited intercourse at this time due to a concern that the couple might be having intercourse just as she begins bleeding, if he's about to depart on a journey, he must have intercourse with her and undergo that risk. And I'm just about done, really close to done. So if you have questions or comments, please get them in now. And the Gemara asks, and how much before the expected onset of menstrual bleeding is considered near the time of her set pattern that the husband and wife should leave off having relations just because she might start bleeding at any moment? And Rava said an interval of time, i.e. half a daily cycle, either a day or a night. Half a day, 12 hours is enough. When you think it's coming, you should leave off 12 hours before you think it'll start. And the Gemara comments, and this statement that a man must have intercourse with his wife before he departs on a journey applies only if he is traveling for an optional matter. But if he is traveling in order to attend to a matter pertaining to a mitzvah, he is not required to have intercourse with his wife so that he not become preoccupied and neglect the mitzvah that he was going to travel to perform. That's what I have for us today. Let's see if there are questions or comments. Here on page 62. Sharon, but Adam and Eve are not recorded as having a boy and a girl. Only 3 boys with 2 survive it. Right, but they didn't, but it's a midrash that we have elsewhere that there was an implication that there were 2 girls, and they interpret that, they derive that from superfluous words in the verses that describe the family setup of Adam and Eve. And it certainly is a better interpretation than they had sex with their mom, which is just, no, right? No. Sharon, we Jews apparently are better adherents when there is a man-God collaboration. Even before the tablets being written collaboratively, we have the story of Nachshon stepping into the sea of reeds being necessary for God to split it. Beautiful teaching, right? That when Pharaoh and his 600 chariots are coming to kill the Jews, and the Jews are backed up to the sea, and they're all desperate, like, now we're really going to die. And they cry out to Moses. Moses cries out to God. God says, lift your arm. What are you crying out to me for? Lift your arm. And the Midrash teaches that Moses lifted his arm and nothing happened. And it was this man, Nachshon, the son of Aminadab, of the tribe of Judea, the prince of the tribe of Judah, who waded out into the water, having faith that it would part, and the water didn't part until he was in it up to his nose. and this idea that sometimes you just have to have faith that God is going to watch out for you and, take that definitive step forward into your mission in life, as it were. Karen, didn't Jacob need to do that whole maneuver with the spotted goats to separate his flocks from Lavan's? It's a good thing that Lavan didn't insist about the children. Right, and that's why ultimately the verse seemed to say, because there was a grandfather saying, are not your children my children? But just like you're saying, that Jacob did this thing with the flocks, to separate which are his animals according to the agreement that he made with Lavan and which are Lavan's animals. And likewise, you just couldn't use that source to say that a man's grandchildren can be counted like his children in case, God forbid, his own children died. And he would ask himself, and if he would inquire, have I fulfilled the obligation to be fruitful and multiply? Okay, David Roop is bringing up Lilith. So Lilith is a controversial figure, and I'm definitely not well versed enough to comment on Lilith and who was Lilith. There's definitely lots of different interpretations of who was Lilith, and was she somehow associated with the Sitra Achra, the other side, the dark side. But in terms of what we're talking about tonight, so Adam and Eve had two other children, that were girls that ended up procreating with Cain and then Abel's replacement, as it were, Seth. What is Lilith's origin? What does she represent? We will talk about that during our Daf Yomi journey. I think we mentioned it already at some point, and we'll definitely be talking about it again. But it's sort of outside of the context of tonight's class. Okay, that's what I've got for us tonight. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. May the merit of our learning today accrue to the healing of Jeannie's husband, Michael, and Jen's dad, Ray. May we hear only good news that they should have a complete and speedy recovery. And may anyone, in our community or the loved ones of our community who are ill, may they be blessed with a complete recovery. We say amen. Have a happy Mother's Day, what's left of it, and all the best to you, my holy sisters.